A bit of a follow-up to our last episode about identity and mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I find there's, if I could boil it down and be very black and white about things, I find there's two identities. I want you to react to this for me. Tell me if you see it differently. You have owners and you have operators. In other words, there's people that truly take ownership of the business in every sense. This is mine. I own it. I can do what I want with it, etc. Versus I'm just the operator pulling the strings and pulling the levers inside the business.
I could not agree more. And what I think is really fascinating about this is the number of people who assume that just because they happen to own a business, that they take ownership over the business. And the number of people who own their business, but are truly acting as operators. And so somewhere still, deep in their soul, feel like there's a boss, that there's someone else calling the shots, that they don't have, full autonomy, versus the folks who, truly feel that they have ownership. And I'm not going to say are owners, but have ownership, who understand that nobody's coming to, make decisions for them, save them in any way. And so I think that's the other thing that's really interesting, is the number of people who might look at those two descriptions and assume that because they have title owner somewhere, on their business card or LinkedIn profile, that they are truly acting as an owner.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a metaphor that might help bring this home. Like think of a manufacturing plant. I don't know why all of my examples go back to manufacturing. It's just simple.
You ever been in a manufacturing plant?
Never in my life, right? But every example comes back to manufacturing and producing mid-century modern dining tables for some reason. I don't know why. So you have the general manager of the plant, operator. What's the general manager responsible for? Production, right? The machines run, the staff run on. They do their jobs, and at the end of the day, we turn a raw material into an end product. They're responsible for production, bottom line, P&L, that kind of stuff. And then you have the owner. The two think very differently, right? Mm-hmm. The general manager is focused on the job that they need to do. And yes, they want to do the job well, and likely they collect a paycheck regardless. And maybe there's a bonus, but do the job well, take your check home, pull the levers, job well done. The owner's operating at a whole other level of awareness, consciousness, decision-making, right? The owner's got to make the tough decisions as to, who to hire, who to fire, as far as the GM goes, leadership team. The owner's got to think about, am I getting reasonable ROI from this particular operation? The owner's got to think about, foreseeing potential macroeconomic changes. Like if I'm the owner of a manufacturing plant in Canada today, well, the 25% tariff imposed by the Trump administration is a big problem for me. The GM's thinking about it, but they don't own that problem. That they're probably working on it, but it's not their problem. That's the owner's problem, right? So it's I think a whole other just level of ownership and problem solving and decision making that, again, to your point, if you're, this very much goes back to that whole notion of working on the business versus in the business. If you're just in the business all the time, pulling the levers like that general manager, you're not even aware of the bigger decisions that you need to be making that might be, on the positive side, massive opportunities for your business that you can't even see. And on the negative side, massive threats that are around the corner.
Yeah, and it really speaks to, we keep going back to this term, which is ownership, or I would say autonomy, right? And the notion that you have control over much more than you certainly did when you were an employee, if that was your path, or that you do in those moments where you are acting as an operator. Because the other thing I'll say is that both of those roles are important and necessary. And what makes it challenging is if you are a solopreneur, sometimes you need to, take off the big picture owner hat and just get it done, right? Without getting too distracted by any of those broader thoughts. But you need to really find a way to be able to pull yourself back out of the day to day, which is the harder shift for most people, right? And be able to zoom out, be able to look at everything around you, to not just look at the manufacturing line, but to look outside of those doors and, see what the impacts are, understand what the opportunities are, and make decisions around it. So, I want to say out loud to everyone who's listening, this isn't as easy as we're going to make it sound, but it is 100% necessary if you, in fact, really want to grow and develop a successful business.
And it's an opportunity, right? Because that general manager, and there are some good general managers out there that probably think like owners as well, but I'm just generalizing here. That general manager probably isn't thinking terribly much about innovation.
Mhm.
Probably isn't thinking about the next product. Like they're trying to optimize what they have.
Mhm.
Here's what we're making. Here are the resources. Here are the machines. Here are the people. Like get that done as efficiently as possible, right? They're solving a problem within really narrowly defined lines. But the big business opportunities are not within that little box.
Yeah.
They are, where's the market headed? What's the next product or service that the market needs? Where can we align with key market trends? What are resources we can acquire that could make our operation even more effective? What are opportunities that we're seeing around the corner that we get? Like, these are the bigger questions that an owner hopefully is thinking about and seeing, and therefore seeing opportunity in. Whereas if you're just the GM focused on working in the business and pulling levers, you're not even seeing any of that. So it's, I think just from an opportunistic perspective, and to your point, this is hard because most consultants, even those with teams, are wearing both hats.
Mhm.
You're an owner and you're an operator.
Yeah.
And I haven't met many who have completely discarded the operator hat. Like most consultants, even the ones that run, $20 million businesses, are still very much operating.
Mhm.
And so it does require, I think, maybe we can speak more to this, some discipline in being able to like separate those roles and operate them, somewhat independently of each other so the lines don't get blurred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because some people, as always, right, there are two kinds of people, and some people very much are in that ownership mindset all the time, and the struggle for them is to get into the nuts and bolts of delivery. What we see more often, and maybe it's a consultant thing, right? Maybe it's because that's the self-selecting group that we're talking about, because you're starting in the work, right? Because you're starting serving the clients, because you're starting in that space, it's harder to shift your way out. And I would say the other thing that makes it even more difficult is that there's nothing, there's no rule book. There's nothing that tells you how to approach these decisions. There's no, as someone who's used to having the answers, right? As someone who's used to being the expert, someone who's used to telling other people how they might want to change the way they do things, really challenging when you bump up against the fact that you just don't know. And so sometimes it's easier to just scuttle on back to being an operator and not even ask yourself, the really complex questions, and ask yourself how you need to step outside of that more defined role that you have been playing.
Yeah. Yeah, because as an operator, there likely is a playbook to solve your particular problem. But as an owner, you get to a point where there are no obvious answers and there's only trade-offs and consequences that you have to manage. And, we saw this a lot, and we see this a lot with some of our higher level clients and masterminds where they've read all the books.
Mhm.
They've read so-and-so's book and so-and-so's book, and they've done the trainings, and they've been through our programs. And then you're faced with a very unique challenge that, maybe not unique in the sense of, but it's a common challenge, but the circumstances that you're facing are unique. It's your clients are unique, your offer is unique, the particulars are unique to you. And all of a sudden there's no cookie cutter answer. Oh, just go do this. And you have to solicit now perspectives. Again, this is where masterminds can become really valuable. You have to solicit perspectives from other folks that have been in similar positions and not copy and paste what they've done, but rather extract insights to inform your own opinion. And at the same time, that's also an opportunity, right? And one of the I think understated benefits of being an owner is that you do get to decide everything, right? You do get to decide what markets to go into. You do get to decide what offers to sell. You do get to decide the pricing. You do get to decide how to deliver and your parameters around delivery and what clients to work with. And you get to make all those decisions. And ultimately, you do that well and you're decisive and you end up building a great business versus the operator mindset is a little bit more, let's take it as it comes. Let's be reactive. Let's respond to things as they come up.
Yeah, I think though some people might hear you say you get to make all those decisions and be sliding towards a panic attack too. And so it's also, I think, worth talking about the fact that you're going to get some wrong. In fact, you might get more wrong than you really get right. And that's also part of the process. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in our program, and honestly, if someone walks away with this piece of information and nothing else, I'm kind of okay with that. And that is, using the scientific method, right? Having a hypothesis, making a decision, making it quickly, moving, but then paying attention to the data and the information that you get back and then correcting course if you need to. We even have people that come to us and what they want is, okay, guys, tell me the perfect solution, right? Tell me exactly how to do this so that nothing will go wrong and everything will be perfect and I can move forward and be confident. And the reality is we can't do that. No one can do that. They can't do that. The only thing that tells you if you've made the right decision is make the decision and then find out what happens in the end. And yes, you can gather all of those perspectives and you can get information and you can seek counsel and you can make an arguably better quality decision. But in the end, the thing you've got to be ready for is that you're going to make some duds, right? You're going to make some calls that lead you in the wrong direction. And seeing those as information, gathering opportunities, seeing those as learnings as opposed to failures, seeing those as ways to get better at the next decision as opposed to the reason to shy away from the next decision. That's the thing that's really going to make you successful in this enterprise. People who are lucky from the beginning, and sometimes luck is part of the thing, right? People that are lucky and get a few in a row right tend to really struggle when they hit their first, quote unquote, bad decision. I hate to even call it that. But I think it's really important to recognize that with this ownership comes this responsibility to have to experiment, quite frankly.
Yeah, we mentioned this, I think, a few times already, but it's relevant here. I mean, we saw a lot of people when the recession hit, who'd done really well, frankly, riding an economic wave.
Mhm. Yeah.
Budgets were flush, clients needed help, and they did well. And then all of a sudden, budgets dried up, and for the first time in their business, they faced challenging macroeconomic conditions, and it was really the first time they'd face any kind of adversity in the business, and that was really challenging for them. And most of them, at least the ones that we've worked with, have certainly overcome that and are stronger as a result. It's funny. We had this conversation earlier today with a group of clients about failure and mistakes. And one of the clients offered a helpful reframe that she uses with her clients. There's no failure or mistakes. There's just feedback. Mm-hmm. It's just feedback. It's just data. That's all it is. And that lines up really well with your notion of the scientific method, right? A good scientist, okay? A bad scientist tries to prove their hypothesis so they're proven to be right. Don't be that scientist, right? But a good scientist has a hypothesis, conducts an experiment, and is completely open to whatever the results may be. There's just data. It's just feedback. There's no emotion tied to it. And if the hypothesis is validated, fantastic. There's probably another round of experiments to be done. And if it's invalidated, that's fine too. There's still another round of experiments to be done. And the scientist doesn't deem themselves good or bad based on the results. And boy, I think that's a really helpful mindset for an owner in business. Is you do something, you make a decision, you make a call. It's not good or bad based on the results. The results are just feedback and data. It's what you do with that feedback or that data that makes it potentially good or bad.